Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Today's guest on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is Suzanne Giesemann. Suzanne is a former, Navy commander, and now she's been a profound spiritual teacher and evidential medium, for the last several years. And she has a new upcoming book that is just released. Pause this for a second. Called The Awakened Way, which I've read, and it's a profound book, and I highly recommend you talking. So we'll talk all things The Awakened Way and different inspirations and different lessons from the book and from Suzanne's teachings. So without further ado, I bring on Suzanne Giesemann on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Suzanne Giesemann, thank you so much for being here as my honored guest on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. How have you been?
Jacob, like busier than a one-armed paper hanger, as they say, but it's fun. And if it never stops being fun, if it stops being fun, we should stop, right?
No, and you're certainly doing a lot between podcasting, touring, and now I see behind you have a beautiful book. It's called The Awakened Way. Is that right?
That's right. I have the first copy, in fact, and just very happy to have it in my hands.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And I know I've read several of your other books, including, Will's Message, as well as Messages of Hope, which were great. And I was able to have the ability to read, the PDF copy of it beforehand, and just totally blew me away. So we'll certainly get into The Awakened Way. I know my viewers will certainly get a lot, from this book and the messages within. But for viewers who aren't familiar with Suzanne Giesemann, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do today, and what may have restarted you on this profound journey that you've been really, upon this last several years?
Thank you. I am a teacher of a pathway to living, just like the title of the book says, The Awakened Way. It's how to live a consciously connected to spirit, divinely guided life. And that is not something I did my whole life. I today connect with spirit quite clearly. I connect with people who have crossed the veil as a medium. But my true calling is as a teacher, to help people come to know that we are so much more than these physical bodies, and that as the souls that we are, we all have the ability to connect with the multiple levels of reality. People find that interesting enough, but then they hear about my background and they're a little bit blown away.
Oh yeah, I mean, certainly being, a Navy commander and working in the Pentagon and everything that happened, but it seemed like for you, where you are today is totally different than where you were, around, the 9/11 time. Could you share maybe what transformed your viewpoint, or was a part of the part that really accelerated this profound awakening that happened to you?
Well, you mentioned 9/11, and certainly that really gave me an up close and personal experience with tragedy and devastation and other people's grief. But I was able to walk away from that. I retired from the Navy literally to get away from all that pain, and sailed off into the sunset, literally, with my husband on our sailboat. But the pain caught up with me in the death of my stepdaughter while we were sailing around the Mediterranean. We came back to the United States for Susan's funeral, and that was the moment at which I could no longer deny I need to go down this path and find out if the spirit world is real. And I dedicated myself from the day of her funeral onward to connecting with Susan, not realizing it would open me to another reality entirely.
And it's amazing that so many paths that you cross came from that point of pain where you were able, do you think going through that allowed you to develop empathy and understanding with all those who have come your way, as a sitter and all the groups that you have today?
There's no doubt about it. I was a compassionate person before, but I was raised by a mother who we called the Queen of Denial. She didn't let us express unhappy or angry feelings at all. We learn to stuff down anything less than positive feelings. And so I could appreciate other people's feelings, but I didn't know how to handle them if they were in grief. Now I sit with people regularly who are in deep grief, and I give them tools for handling those emotions. So it's really quite a turnaround.
Yeah, and certainly your book that you just, is about to release late April is all about, in many ways those same tools. But tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write The Awakened Way. I mean, you've written several books before, they've all had profound messages. What would you say differentiates The Awakened Way with some of your other profound books that have changed so many lives?
That's an easy one, Jacob. This is finally my how-to book.
Mm,
I've written, as you said, many other books, and they're memoirs, they're biographies of other mediums, they're books, collections of stories about the afterlife. But so many people come up to me in the classes that I teach and say, which book should I buy if I want to learn how to connect across the veil? Which book should I read if I want to really understand who we are as souls? And I didn't have one until now.
mm.
So this book finally is one when people ask for guidance, I can just hand them this one.
Yeah, and there's a lot of self-help books, but what would you say differentiates other types of self-help books that are how-to, versus the awakened way?
I would say there are two main things, Jacob. Number one is that this one teaches us to make the shift out of the only human, this is my problem viewpoint, to the soul's viewpoint where we're already whole. And that is the second point, that we are not broken at the level of the soul. We may be wounded in our human stories, but at the level of the soul, we're already whole. So with the awakened way, you learn to observe, to step back from the drama and take the soul's perspective, and that changes everything.
Mm, mm. And this is a big emphasis of your book, which, being from New York, I love this acronym that you have of BS, which is beyond the story, I believe. But could you maybe elaborate a little bit about the BS acronym that you have within your teachings in the book? Because I think that's such a profound shift that people could have if they get over their BS, so to speak.
Yes, and military people love acronyms. So as you
Right.
did note, that throughout the book, but in this case, BS stands for belief system.
Mm,
Your belief system is what holds you prisoner. And one of the major beliefs that most humans walk around with is, I'm only human. We have
mm,
song lyrics that pound this into our head, I'm only human, or it's an excuse me make, well, I'm only human. And so we take that as reality until you learn to step back, to make that shift, to spend time observing the mind, and then you experience other states of awareness beyond this normal waking consciousness, and you realize there is more than being only human.
mm. What do you think causes people to just see themselves as just a human being, and how do people break through, that just that's limited understanding?
Well, beyond picking up other people's BS that tells us we're only human, the belief system, the second thing is that we rely on our physical senses to
Mm,
tell us what is real.
mm,
And we all know that we're surrounded by optical illusions, one of the main ones being that the sun rises and sets. We take that for granted, even though we know it's not true. That's just the way it appears. So until you stop and question reality, you don't realize that we're being misled. We're also being held captive by our fascination with what we see and what we hear and what we feel.
mm,
And so any practice that allows you to shut out these distractions and simply pay attention to what arises beyond the physical senses is going to open you to other states of consciousness and thus other realities.
I love it. I know someone that you were close to, Dr. Wayne Dyer, or at least he endorsed, some of your books, which, gives some of his talks where he would discuss, I know you love the water, but like the boat that is leaving the eyesight of someone, and then they're looking past the horizon and they look at the boat and they say, "My God, I don't see that boat. It's no longer physically there. It must be gone." And then the person says, "What are you talking about? It's just as strong and beautiful as it's ever been." Just because the physical eyes doesn't see it does not mean it's still not going on with this voyage. And I know that you really highlight that there's other senses that we have in us, and we're able to understand and break some of that belief systems that we have. Amazing things could happen, but we have to be willing to explore and expand that box of reality. And this book really emphasizes ways to do that.
Well, let me share an amazing experience with you that has to do with Wayne Dyer, Jacob. When I finished the manuscript, I knew that Hay House would be the perfect publisher for this book. And of course, Wayne Dyer was a big Hay House author. And I've connected with him several times since he passed with really great evidence to back up that it was him. He told me things I couldn't possibly know about the way he passed and led me to some wondrous synchronicities. So when I got ready to send this manuscript to Hay House, I sat in meditation. I said, "Wayne, will you help me with this book?" And I visualized the whole process of it being very easily accepted. I felt his presence. And he said that he was absolutely on board, that he was going to help me, and that we needed this material, which I was very happy to hear. Well, the very next morning, I sat down at my computer and a YouTube video popped up on the screen with Wayne Dyer. I have never watched a Wayne Dyer video on YouTube, and not even recently on that computer was I on YouTube. And this wasn't just any video. There it is, full screen, staring back at me, Wayne Dyer saying, "You can manifest your desires."
You just can't make this up. And I'll tell you one other thing. Your book, I think it's going to be released April 30th, if I'm not mistaken, which is right by Wayne Dyer's birthday. I think his is in, mid to early May, from my understanding. So just a lot of his birthday on either side. So someone that I certainly connect to. But I'll tell you another synchronicity with Wayne. You use another acronym, because I know it seems like you utilize a lot of your military background within your teaching, and that acronym is No Other Explanation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I made that one up because so many people talk about their NDEs, near-death experience, their STEs, spiritually transformative experiences, OBEs, out-of-body experience. So any of us can have NOEs, or no other explanation, moments that open us up to the awareness of who and what we are.
Yeah. No, I mean, the reason why I'm smiling is NOEs. There's a woman that I work with very closely named Karen Noe.
Yes.
She's like I just did a workshop by her place in Jersey. So it's just funny how her last name, there's like a little bit of a hyphen in it, but NOE, no other, and she has certainly no other explanations for the work that she does, but she, wrote a book, I think it's called it was like a channel book about the teachings of Wayne Dyer. So very, very profound. But let me, when I was reading your book, one thing that I noticed about you is you seem to be a magnet of synchronicities and just magic, flowing through you. Like, I've had stuff happen to me, but I mean, the stuff that you experience on a daily basis is profound. Could you share maybe how that's possible? And also, your book, The Awakened Way, is filled with these amazing NOEs that just blew me away, just one after the other. I mean, for someone to have this in one lifetime is impressive, but for you to have this in a week, in a month, in a year is just amazing. So how does that work? And maybe could you share us a couple stories of NOEs for viewers to listen to, because they moved me when I read the book, certainly.
Yeah, well, it happens when we align with our true nature, when we realize we're souls. We try to live from that state of making choices that align with love and connection with each other. They're the universe's way of showing you're in the flow. So when I discovered that the more I am the presence of love, the more I clear out any only human nasty stuff in me, the snarky things you might say to people, the more I noticed that and cleared it out, the more I got in the flow.
Mhm.
Also, very key is daily ongoing communication with higher beings, whether that's your own loved ones who have passed, just opening a conversation, or acknowledging that we have guides, that angels are real and they're here to help us, and asking for that help. And then every time there is a little sign or synchronicity, thanking them and
Mhm.
asking for another sign whenever you have a communication with them. So it's self-perpetuating, but it does take effort and commitment. But as you say, these NOEs are wondrous, they're fun. And once you start noticing how they work and start connecting the dots, you just can't deny that they're real.
Oh my God. And there's levels of synchronicities. I know Dr. Gary Schwartz talk about when like 4 or 5 happen at once. It's almost like a super synchronicity. And this book has a lot of just ties from one thing to the next. It is just remarkable. But gratitude seems to be a big part of your teaching. And there's a teaching by this teacher named, I think, Zig Ziglar, where he says, you know, your attitude, not your aptitude, will define your altitude. I'm sorry, your gratitude, and so part of it is your gratitude. But a sense, when you have that attitude of gratitude, our emotional and spiritual altitude, increases. And so, but why is it so important for us to be grateful, and how does that really help us to connect and broaden that light and broaden our connectivity to the spirit realm?
It's because beneath the physical bodies, energy is the basis of all there is.
Mhm.
And energy carries a frequency. Every thought that we have, every action we take has a certain energetic signature.
Mhm.
Gratitude is one of the highest frequencies we can have. It aligns us immediately with love, which is the absolute highest vibration. And so anytime we're feeling off balance, anytime we want to connect to get guidance, insights, to know that we're not alone, we simply drop our awareness into the heart, get centered with a nice breath, and bring to mind something or someone you're grateful for. Don't just think about them, though. When you feel that vibration, if you could see us as those in the spirit world see us, you would just see our light glow brighter when we do that. As I say this, Jacob, it sounds like airy fairy stuff that woo-woo teachers say, but there's an organization called the Heart Math Organization with
Yes.
very smart scientists who have done experiments that are replicated showing that feelings of gratitude send the radiations from the heart and the brain into a pattern of what's called coherence, a coherent state where the amplitude of the sine waves is pretty much the same and the troughs and the peaks align. And when you're in a state of coherence, you're much easier to tune into guidance.
So it's just, a congruency with your thoughts, your feelings, and just aligned with really high vibrational truths and connectivity. Because a lot of what I like about this book is there's a lot of spirituality that could be very heady or regurgitated, and it's nice to have the information piece. But what I like about this book rather, is that it shows you how to integrate, all those higher thoughts into action. And so there's a certain acronym that you have that you've used in the book. I think it's called Bless You, if I'm right or wrong, where it's just this way to connect. But for people who are having a hard time, really connecting their thoughts and understanding with their experiential reality, what would you recommend people do to really find that awakened way and, get
Very
in touch with
simple. We really need a way to shut out the distractions, to notice how the mind operates from that witness soul's point of
that?
view, and to ask questions and get answers from a higher dimension. And the way to do that is a very simple 3-minute practice that I introduced in the book called the Sip of the Divine. Many people are already familiar with this if they followed my work, because I've been sharing it in classes and videos for years now. I know that hundreds of thousands of people are really enjoying sitting in peace for 3 minutes. That's the acronym SIP of the Divine. But the reason it's so helpful, Jacob, is because we can talk about these concepts, we can write about them, but it's the personal experience of our expanded state that changes lives.
It's all about the experiential reality. Like, like we could talk about a swimming pool until we're blue in the face, but till you get into that pool, you just don't know what it is. And so that's really what I love about your teachings. It's really about the application. And
Diving in.
that's it, taking a deep dive into the deep waters. Now, I know in your book you really reference a lot of your own personal guide. Could you talk a little bit about that connection, how that started, and also the spirit guides that we have, and how to maybe connect or feel those presences around us?
You bet. There's a whole section on spirit guides because people are eager to know that help is as close as your thoughts, that our guides are right here. And I have to tell you, when I first started down this path, I absolutely did not believe in spirit guides. I thought that was something that was just wishful thinking, until my guide made his presence known in ways that I just could not deny. For example, doing a reading for a client, and I saw little black spots floating in front of her, and I thought, oh my gosh, she has cancer. I just knew it intuitively, tapping into the higher realms. And this voice over here that I thought might be a guide, but I really wasn't ready to buy into it, said, tell her. And I thought, I'm not going to say a word. And he said again, tell her. And I said, you want me to tell her she has cancer? And he said, just tell her. So I said, I'm supposed to tell you I see these black spots floating in front of you. And she said, oh yes, it's metastasized. So I looked at her and I said, you know you have cancer? Yes. And I asked her, then what do you want from me? And she said, well, I was hoping to find out if I should get a second opinion. Now, right away, the human side of us would say, well, sure, why not? But this is when I really knew I had a guide, because immediately in my mind, another voice said, yes, but not because it will change the outcome, but because it will provide an alternate modality of treatment. And I just knew those weren't my words. And that's one of the best ways we know this is not our imagination, which, Jacob, is one of the top questions people ask all the time. How do I know I'm not making this up when I talk to my guides? They give you information you wouldn't have thought of yourself. It comes in a novel and unique way with just a knowing, this is not me.
And so, yes, that is a big question that people have, where they're like, how do I know this isn't my thoughts, or this is coming from somewhere else? But from what you're saying, it's, you have to learn how to get out of your own way, which is a big emphasis of the book to a degree, and getting out of your own story.
Yeah.
And also understanding like what is coming from you versus what is coming through you.
Yes.
And that's a big dichotomy that people have to really learn how to understand the difference.
Well, I love that you get this in your books. You've written it so beautifully as well. So I love that there's really not a whole lot that's new in many of these books, but we're all showing things in our own way, from our own unique perspectives, and peeling back the layers of the onion to get at the core, right?
Yeah, well, I will say I love this book in terms of the angles and the depths that it has. It's just amazing how where you go with this book and how deep it is, and it's just so profound. And would you say that your guides have helped this book as well too? Because I know they work on an individual basis, but they really help you out with this.
Oh, there's no doubt. I recorded the book for Audible, for the audio version, and just reading it, I felt as if I were reading the words for the first time, even though I know that I was consciously writing them. It wasn't direct channeling. There's just no doubt in my mind that every bit of it was guided. You can feel the energy when you read it. The higher consciousness is just imbued in it. And the best part is, I know that people who read it will feel that as well, and it will uplift them and change them in ways they don't anticipate.
I have no doubt. Now, I wanted to ask you, because you've seen tons of NOEs, and I'm sure you've had several already today, I'm sure. But is there like, I don't know, but our conversation to here is
I did. Actually, I did. I just thought of today's. Yep.
Is there like one or two NOEs that, and I know there were many from what I read in the book, but that kind of stick out with you at the moment that you would like us to share? Like a particular story where there's just no other explanation for it.
Well, possibly one that's in the book, so many may know about it already, and I did a video about my encounter with Archangel Michael. If you thought it was hard for me to accept that guides are real and then angels are real, imagine what it's like to be visited in meditation by a powerful being and silently ask him, "Who are you?" And he answers, "Archangel Michael." My actual reply was, "Oh no," because I knew I would have to change my BS again, right? My belief system. But he told me things in that encounter that then unfolded during the same day in the most miraculous ways. He talked about Hebrews. He gave me a statement that came up later in the day. He talked about coherence and multiple other things that when I ended up on a hiking trail that I wasn't supposed to be on, I took a wrong turn later that afternoon and encountered two Hebrews who specialized in their work in coherence and stated the things that came up in the
Wow.
encounter with Archangel Michael. I just had to set that BS aside, didn't I?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, it's amazing. And do you still connect? Was that like a one-off thing, or do you still at times feel that
It,
around you?
I do feel his energy around me, and in fact, had him come through in one reading that I did. He doesn't come often, you know. He saves those silver bullets for the big things, but this one reading was really profound when he popped in, and I thought to myself, "What are you doing here in this man's reading? This is just an ordinary day," and I was getting information about the client, and the client said, "Who are you talking to?" And I thought, "Oh gosh, here we go." I said, "It's Archangel Michael," because I recognized his energy. I knew his signature. And he got real excited, and he said, "Ask him if we've ever met." And I asked him, and I said, "The answer is yes." And he proceeded to grill me, this client. What was he wearing? What did we talk about? What was he carrying? Every single answer came from Archangel Michael. Now, skeptics might say you were just picking up what thoughts were in your client's mind. But because of that previous encounter, I knew what Michael felt like. I know what it's like to have a two-way, real-time conversation with a being across the veil. And that's what we were having. And it just shook both of us to the core to realize that angels can appear and help us here in physical form, and that man's encounter really happened.
Wow. And what I love about your path and your work is it's constantly evolving. It's never like stagnant. There's
Oh, yeah.
always new, like we were talking about with Wayne Dyer, there was always something, a new teaching, a new idea that he was coming out with. And so for people who are on their path, how do they continuously stay fresh and stay
Mm,
new and continually grow? Because we could easily get complacent and
right.
stagnant in all walks of life. So how do we find that breakthroughs that you continuously experience in your everyday life?
It does take effort, Jacob, and we need reminders and dedication. In fact, there's a section in the book that talks about how you can have little reminders around you that cause you to say, "Oh, have I checked in with spirit lately? Have I done my 3-minute meditation or more today?"
Mm.
You say that things are always new for me, and they are, because I've set the intention to constantly be improving, knowing that's why we're here. So
Mm.
every month for over 7 years, I've been leading what I call monthly connection webinars. And one of my assistants just emailed me today and said, "The monthly connection's coming up on Tuesday." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, so soon." But luckily, every time I have an NOE, every time I get new teaching in meditation or receive an insight from a download, I immediately document it and add it to the notes for the next month's webinar. So they have never failed, they being my guides and those in spirit, have never failed to give me 2 hours of fresh teaching every month for years. And it's a blessing because this path helps me, and then I'm able to help others constantly grow.
Right. And it's just a great, balance of receiving and of service that you certainly come out of. But it seems like a big thing is being open, but also being aware and being able to document and not just having it like blow past you, but to be present and just to have that gratitude that you emphasize.
That's huge. And that comes, I know, from setting the intention. So what everybody watching right now can do right away is say, not just, hey, I want that, but drop into the heart, and from the heart to the spirit world. Even if you haven't encountered your guides yet, say, I intend to have that kind of experience myself. I intend and will do my best to remain more aware, more present, and to work with you and celebrate these wondrous connections every time they arise. See, now that's a solid intention, and the spirit world will then put thoughts in your head to remind you. That's how it works.
Wow. And is this something that I think I've heard you mention in the book, but it has to do with the God lens, so to speak, like kind of like looking at the world through this spiritual lens or these eyes of God. But what does it mean to really look at the world through a spiritual lens or God lens? What would you say that means to one on their path?
That's that shift that's in the subtitle to the book, making the shift to a divinely guided life. It's simply a shift in perspective. It's not literally seeing things physically different.
Mm,
It's a way of knowing from the heart rather than giving first dibs to thinking from the brain. And that's a new way of training yourself to be.
mm. That, yes, the mind and the heart, a couple inches apart, but they could be so far away or yet together. And so this book is really about having that mergence, of the mind and the heart, which Harvard has now labeled as, the second brain in a way. Like there's an intelligence
Yeah.
they're finding with the heart, which is amazing.
And when we got started, I said to you that I was feeling scattered. It's
Mm,
because I spent most of the afternoon engaged in a very left brain activity, and I didn't take enough time to get balanced when we sat down here. So even while we were talking, I was literally pulling in with my intention the energy from the earth and pulling down the energy from the cosmos and just visualizing equally balanced flows of masculine and feminine energy. And to do it on the fly like that really works. And just as a result, able
mm,
to think a little more clearly. So the tools that we can learn make such a difference in our moment to moment living that it's worth the effort that goes into it.
mm. And I think what I love about your teachings in your book is that you don't have to go millions of miles away or to go to someone else for the tools, that they're innately in ourselves, and we just really have to tap into it. And the best help that we get for us is just moments of tuning in. And we could be amazed what we could do when we pivot and recenter and recalibrate. But again, habits are very important to
Yeah,
develop, and
yeah.
my hope is people could integrate a lot of their teachings in your book, even if it's just one or two teachings. There's a shift in their life, and they're developing better patterns and better habits to make that change.
Exactly. And that's why I love the sip of the divine as a basic tool, because anybody can spare 3 minutes a day. And
Mm,
if you do that every day for 3 weeks, you're starting to establish a new habit. And the
mm,
best part about the sip of the divine, besides 3 minutes of peace from the busyness of being human,
right.
you get to ask a question every day, like having a genie in a bottle.
Mm,
What do I need to know right now? Or anything that's going to provide a helpful answer. And when you start to get those answers that you know are not from your own mind, you realize what a valuable practice this is, and you've now made a positive change.
curiosity, openness, all those things are significant. Now, I'm wondering for you, just the title itself and a lot of your work has to do with the awakened way. When people think of the awakened one or the awakening, there's a lot of Buddhist or Eastern philosophy that people correspond to. First of all, what drew you to that particular title within your work? That word, and are you drawn at all to some of the practices of the Far East? Does that speak to you,
They
in a way?
definitely do, but I find that most religions have gems, and
Mm,
they really do all lead us to the same place, the same state
right,
of
right.
being. Uh, Awakening, I know that this term came in one of the very first poems I was given when I started to receive poetry and meditation.
Mm,
And so it's really just the opposite of sleeping through life thinking this is all there is. So anybody that says I'm awakened or I'm enlightened, you might want to walk the other way, because it's a process. It's not something that just happens and you hold it. It's very easy with all these human distractions to slip backwards. I mean, I have my moments of being very human. In fact, Jacob, I was on the phone with a customer service guy the other day after being online with an airlines for an hour and a half. I didn't realize how knocked off balance I was. An hour and a half of just doing a very human left brain thing. And out of my mouth came this very sarcastic comment. But the beauty is when you're trained to be present and aware, you automatically notice when you're not aligned with the soul. Oh, I caught myself immediately. I apologized to the guy, and poor thing, he said, oh, that's all right. It's my job to be the whipping boy. And I thought, oh, how awful that there are so many sleepy people that we treat each other this way. So it's my goal that more and more people will live the awakened way and at least catch ourselves when we're in human mode. In fact, I don't know if you remember the tool in the book about the human and spirit dial. Do you remember that one? Where,
sure, yes.
Yeah, like a fuel tank. H is human and S is spirit on the other side. And we notice which one's dialed up. When I was sarcastic with the guy, ooh, that was H 100%. And it felt horrible. So we just, push the dial back to the spirit side. I sent him all kinds of apologies. I gave him my gratitude. There's that gratitude. And then I was balanced again, right in the middle, because we're both human and soul. It's finding that beautiful balance and dialing up the appropriate response and viewpoint moment by moment.
I love it. And, and thank you for sharing that vulnerability, because I think a lot of people, they put all types of spiritual teachers on pedestals, and they forget, that we're human, or that at times we flip people off. We have our, it happens, but we are able to pivot, recenter, and we understand when we're a little bit off kiltered. And my hope is for viewers to remember that about yourself, to not beat yourself up so much if you have your human moments, but to be gentle on yourselves and just make that shift to really who you are. But so many people get caught in this human identity, which you refer to as, it's almost kind of like being a method actor in this life, where you wear this suit, you have this name, and you're like, oh my God, I'm from this culture and I have to act this way, and this is who I am. And there's no room or bandwidth for change. And I think what you're providing, direct examples is, we experience ourselves in all these roles and acts, but who we are is a magnificent divine being when you break it down at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I can step into my Navy commander role very easily. I can get very serious, give you a sharp salute. I can be very authoritative, but it just doesn't fit well, that costume anymore.
Yeah, and they're all just lessons of our souls and just different experiences that we have in different roles. So absolutely, we all have an ability to transcend and to shift if we are open to it. So for people who, I guess right now is what I'm asking is, without getting into too much specifics, the world is going through a lot. It's really turned upside down in some ways, depending on what you look at it. There's a lot of calamity. How would you say your teachings speak to this very moment? Like, what do you feel are some of the shifts that people need to make in order to really have a greater evolution and change, for this moment in time? Because there is a lot going on, as there always is, but it seems like the last 4 years we've been just one thing after another. It seems like the 10 commandments, the 10 plagues that we're about to experience in my faith with Passover. But just maybe shed light a little bit about the moment that we're in and how the awakened way speaks to this moment.
Well, knowing that we're not only human, that we are souls, and we're all interconnected at the level of the soul. We're part of one big web, and that love is the healing force of the universe. We make that shift. We get to that place of wholeness and look down upon the fractured parts of ourselves with compassion and understanding. We don't get sucked into the drama, and we see all of the chaos as opportunities. We know that growth results from pain and from being shaken up, and we don't get discouraged, but bring our love into the picture. be willing to allow things to unfold as they are without resisting them, and then get new insights that help other people also not despair.
And, it's amazing because your own life, you've been able to embody this with the most challenging moment, arguably that, a step parent or a parent could have of losing a child. It was a shakeup period and just allowed you to reevaluate things in a new way. And I hope is when there's shakeup periods that people could find different ways of it reevaluating things, or to kind of, as my teacher George Mumford says, to get in the eye of the hurricane, where on the outside the hurricane there's a lot of stuff happening, but to get into that eye, that's when that wisdom and that insight and understanding is to be there. So I definitely know that the awakened way will help people to really get back into that inner way of viewing and viewing things on a different level. Um, what's that? And I know you had that Einstein quote in the book that our ability to solve problems comes from our level of our awareness. So certainly that's what we're faced right now is what we're tuning into in our levels of awareness.
Yeah, we have to go higher to get answers at this level here. And I didn't know how to do that in the past. So I'm a very good note taker. I question a lot. And my goal is to put things into very simple terms using easy to understand metaphors so that anybody can get this, and that they're eager then to have their own personal experience of the higher realms where the answers lie.
Yeah. No, and the book is great too, is that we are nonlinear beings, and the book is nonlinear. It has nonlinearity to it, where you could go from one chapter to the next and be able to just read it as you please, because that speaks to our own being. So an incredible book.
I love that when I sent it to you, you did respond with this kind of enthusiasm. You're not just saying that because you're a podcast host, and that's very hopeful to me, that as the book is just being released now, that other people will have the same kind of response. So thank you.
Well, it's interesting using the term enthusiasm, because our friend Dr. Wayne Dyer would give a teaching about the root word enthusiasm, which had the root word entheos, which means the God within. And when you're, connecting to the things you love, it brings out that spark of divinity. So I know this book will bring out a lot of enthusiasm and connect to your own infinity of divinity, as they say. But yeah.
But my parents had a different take on that word.
Right.
I've always been very enthusiastic about things, and they called me Susie as a kid, and so they called this my enthusiasm.
Oh, wow. You certainly live that way. Well, Suzanne, are there any other teachings or messages that you have, that are coming to you from your book, or just at the moment, that you would like to share with viewers? Because we've hit on a lot of points, but I know there's an infinite, eternal reservoir of information that you're connected to at all times. So, yeah.
But it's just that this book is not only for people who want to connect with loved ones across the veil. That's one category. But the book will also speak to people who sometimes just want off the planet, people who are despairing, depressed, and just need a better way. That's what we say. There is a better way, the awakened way. And the third group would be people who've just been seeking and seeking on a spiritual path, but still find an emptiness inside and don't really know how to find what will fill that emptiness. This book will do that. It may be the last book people ever need, because suddenly things will just click. That's my goal.
I love it. And I certainly have felt that. And I know many other viewers have as well. Now, Suzanne, if someone wants to follow some of your events, or purchase your book, or get in touch with you, what are some of the best ways to find your book, but also to get in touch with Suzanne and Co, as I personally call it? But
well, just like many people, my website is my name, so SuzanneGiesemann.com, and I'm always having new events coming up. So the top 5 events will be listed right under the opening banner on my website. So just get to that homepage, scroll down just a little, and see where we can meet online or in person, including some cruises coming up where we spend either a week to 10 days together with 14 hours of Awakened Way teaching. My podcast is airing weekly, literally hundreds of videos online, and all of that along with many gifts and giveaways, are on my website. I believe in finding that balance between free material, things that everybody can afford if they have a price, and then there are things that when we're blessed to have a little abundance, we can do the bigger ticket items, which all lead us to feeling a sense of connection and celebrating this beautiful life. I do want to say, even though I've talked about my enthusiasm and I'm happy now, I have known what it's like to grieve with the death of my stepdaughter and my mother and my father and my dogs. I suffered with the rest of them, but each passing showed how the awakened way of living has helped me not suffer as much. My daughter's death was the worst thing I could ever go through, and I had no tools. Then by the time my father passed, I had a few tools, but still didn't remember we're not only human. By the time my mother passed, I knew who we were, and I still cried my eyes out that my mother passed, but I knew that we were still connected. And same thing with when my dogs passed. So don't look at me and think, oh, she's had this perfect, charmed life. We all suffer. It's part of the human experience, but with tools, we don't have to suffer as much. And our day-to-day lives can be filled with a sense of connection that many people can't even imagine. So if you can imagine, this book will help you get there.
And I know for many, it could make that shift from emptiness into wholeness, and that connectivity, and just knowing that love never ends and it's eternal, and we could still have dialogue and connectivity, and that communication line is always open. So absolutely.
Indeed it is.
All right. Well, Suzanne Giesemann, thank you so much for being my honored guest. Just a pleasure to have you. And I know we'll have to have you come back here on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder, sharing your incredible wisdom. You have an open invite at any time, but just a true honor to have you. And I learned so much from you as someone that I see as a teacher, and just a profound bearer of light and wisdom and guidance to so many. And I couldn't thank you enough for having this book out and the work that you do.
Oh, thank you, Jacob, and for you guiding people as well. It's a joy to be on the journey with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Suzanne Giesemann, thank you very much. Well, that was a wonderful conversation with Suzanne. Hope you'd enjoyed it as much as I did. Got a lot of information out of it, and I felt that it was a profound dialogue. We're able to really understand the awakened way in different ways to integrate into our everyday life. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as bell notification icon to stay up to date to weekly podcasts coming your way. Thank you for tuning in. This is Jacob Cooper signing off here on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder podcast. Thank you.